your boy, Remoy George Philip the First.
And I'm Samantha Zessie Kifler. This
is Masculinity.
The show that investigates the performance of masculinity in the world today, and you know we spell it with a hard K.
So, Samantha.
Yes, Remoy?
Don't be shy. Update the listeners. We're all pins and needles. Tell us about that, major life update a few weeks ago.
I mean, honestly, despite your best efforts in the marriage episode, I did go and get hitched.
Mm-hmm. I tried real hard.
You did. You really did. It was touch and go for a little bit, but we made it. We made it across the altar, and it was a beautiful day, beautiful couple days, and you were there for them both.
Yeah, I was about to say, it was a beautiful 2 days. It was magical. Yes. It was special. I teared up a little bit.
It was nice.
Shall we say it was a magical start to a new season of life?
Well, maybe not exploiting my wedding so close to Remoy. To be metaphorical, let me just say literatical, if you will.
No, it's not a word. Not a word.
I'm quoting you on this one. Language is fluid. That was you a few episodes ago.
Okay. Yep. Yeah. Hearing my own genius. Repeat it back to me. I'm not mad at that. No.
Oh, so is your genius trying to be metaphorical about us starting a new season of the show, perhaps?
You think you know me. Wow.
Well, 14 years into this friendship, yes, Remoy, I do know you, despite your best efforts to be secretive.
Okay. So the connection is it literatically making? Yeah, the connection I'm literatically making.
Oh, yes. Speak my own genius back to me. I love it when you do that. It doesn't bother me at all. It's great.
It's, it's back to school season.
So are you making the pitch for the English teacher on Hulu? Hulu, we're not doing free ads for you. Pay us.
Oh, come on. Yeah, come on, Hulu. Actually, first and foremost, I'm here to confirm that Powder Puff is real. Kyle, Powder Puff is real. You know Powder Puff?
Is that girls' high school football?
Yeah.
Oh my God. Is that what it is? They changed it to, that's right. Oh my God. I'm assuming this is your regularly scheduled pop quiz transition. Oh my God. I can't believe
Okay. Joining us today is someone who has a very memorable connection to pop quizzes and at least the very first days of high school. Yes. He has one compelling back to school story that has him here with us today. Kyle Mitchell. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Well, in lieu of back to school season, and as Samantha, you did predict.
Who is really the genius here? I think we have one in our midst.
Kyle, pop quiz. What are we talking about on the show today?
Genius equals me. Yeah?
Yeah. Let's just go with that. I like it.
Those first day of school jitters with Kyle, Samantha, and me. That's right after this short break.
Curious about next-gen men? We're a small part of a much larger movement to undefine masculinity for a brighter future. Our mission is clear: empower the next generation to use their curiosity, empathy, and courage to build a more equitable world. Join the Next Gen Men community as we learn and unlearn together. We're here to support boys and men to break free from limiting stereotypes. We're not just an organization, we're a catalyst for reimagining masculinity and fostering inclusivity. We're here to help open up possibilities for what men and boys can be. Explore the world of Next Gen Men at nextgenmen.ca and join the community to make a difference. Next Gen Men, shaping tomorrow's leaders one step at a time. Join us and help undefine masculinity and empower the next generation of men to lead with empathy and courage.
Samantha, I'm wondering.
You wonder? Oh boy.
Do you have any fond memories about starting a new school year?
Fond? Do you mean treacherous?
No, not exactly. For me, I remember loving back to school shopping. It's basically Christmas for me.
Is it?
I don't know about you. Maybe this is applicable, but I remember wandering through giant aisles of Walmart with my grandma, or my umachi as I call her, or my mom. Inevitably having to face this giant existential question of college ruled or wide ruled paper.
I'm on team college ruled. Why does wide ruled even exist? Wait, do kids even use paper anymore? I feel like they just Siri everything into a notes app. Do they write?
And Trapper Keepers, I remember those were the super hype thing I'd get about.
You know what? When I saw Trappers Keepers, I had so much hope for this country. Just a binder with all these slots for pens. Alas.
And then there was like those like paper hole fixer things. like inevitably all my college ruled paper and those Trapper Keepers would get like torn to shreds.
Yes, because you don't have, I'm from France and we have it's like something that you put to make sure that it doesn't break the paper. But y'all don't have that here. After 25 years, you still haven't figured it out. I don't understand.
Well, our guest today, Kyle Mitchell, you have one particular story about going back to school that got us here. Isn't that right, Kyle?
Yeah, back to school shopping. No. Yeah. So with the beginning of my sophomore year of high school, so I grew up going to this like really small private school that I felt somewhat comfortable in. I had a small group of friends, that type of thing. And then I transferred to this very large public school where I knew no one, which, I mean, that would be probably difficult for just about everyone, especially a teenager, you know, going to a completely new environment where you don't know anybody. But add some social anxiety onto that, and it was basically my worst nightmare.
Wow. So yeah, it was that first day, right, of like figuring out what you're going to do for the 40 minutes. You were just like walking around trying to figure something out. Somebody was like, why are you walking around, Kyle? That's weird.
The 40 minutes that you're referring to is, you know, the bus would drop me off 40 minutes before class started, and I didn't know what to do. I didn't want to be by myself somewhere because I felt like people would be judging me. So, you know, for 40 minutes, I just walked around the halls thinking I would just be able to blend in, and I did blend in for a good while. It worked for a long time. And then, like you said, somebody, you know, kind of called me out and asked, you know, what are you doing? And that's what kind of led to my rock bottom of just kind of not walking halls anymore, but going into the bathroom, you know, sitting there and just crying to myself and having all these, you know, anxious thoughts and kind of playing to the idea of why am I not normal like everybody else? You know, why can't I make friends like everybody else? Because it looks like everybody else can do it, and I'm over here struggling, and I'm the only one apparently struggling.
Yeah, like Samantha, I'm like, after all these years of friendship, I doubt you know this about me.
Huh. It's interesting you doubt me, but sure. Actually, no, that makes sense because you are a secretive man.
So it wasn't my freshman to sophomore year, but it was my sophomore to junior year. I did something eerily similar. So when I heard Kyle's story for the first time, I was like, what the? But I decided to go from the tiny private Christian school I grew up in, somewhat comfortable as well. I had a small group of friends, and transitioned to, dun, 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 one giant public school.
Wow, you're right.
Being right. Yeah. Music to my brown ears. Sure. Yeah. Tell me I'm right more often. Okay.
I mean, I just, you know, you're right. I didn't know that story. So
14 years. See?
Secrets. But anyway, Kyle, is that surprising for you to hear that like Remoy's story is eerily similar to yours?
I used to be surprised by it, but now I hear about it all the time. In fact, the last podcast I was on, somebody told me the exact same thing, that, you know, when they were in, I don't remember what grade, you know, they went from a private school to a large public school as well. And they were telling me kind of some of the difficult transitions for them that was involved in that. So, yeah, it's very interesting because when I was going through that whole process, I felt so alone. Like I was the only one who felt like this, that was struggling. And I mean, now I know, looking back, that lots of people struggle with that. Definitely in the school that I was in, there was people struggling with anxiety. But at that moment, you know, I felt like it was just me. I'm the only one who's not normal. Everybody else is living great and happy. And what is wrong with me?
Wow. So was this as big of a transition for you, Remoy?
Oh, yeah. I mean, a lot of the eerily similar thought. Actually, Kyle, you kind of mentioned this, but like you said, you knew nobody. Like you knew nobody going into this new school?
Nobody. I knew absolutely no one.
Yeah, that's terrifying because that's kind of the actual existential question at that age, right? Like how to make friends.
Yeah.
Like I knew a few kids, but these were like cool kids. Like we knew each other when we were younger, when there was not cool. But then in high school, they were like super high up the food chain. And here I was, this incredibly shy, insecure kid just showing up being like, oh no.
I mean, and look at you now, you know, smooth skin, literati, out here making podcasts, you know, glow up is real.
Super shy and just terrified, honestly, frightened the fuck out. Like, I don't know.
God, I love when you're vulnerable like this. Please continue.
Sure. Okay.
Please continue.
for example, like my first semester, like I'd started this school, I had this study hall class in the library, and there were like all these like, this library, so these like big circular lunchroom tables filled with other kids, just taking advantage of not having to doing anything in study hall and just goofing off, right?
Well, the scene is set, that's for sure.
And each day I'd walk in, desperate that nobody sees me, find a table that's completely empty, sit my ass down, and just like try not to be seen, not move for the next 50 minutes.
Interesting.
But wait, okay, so you did that for the whole semester, though? It's a long time, yeah.
I'll give myself some credit towards the end of that semester. If and when I could conjure up like the bravery, I'd occasionally stand up, walk to one of the shelves in the library and get ready for it. I'd grab a magazine and like run back to the table and sit down and pretend I never did that.
Wait, so what do you think you were scared of in that time?
Yeah, good question. I think I was just terrified of what those other kids were thinking of me, right? Like I kept imagining all these like scenes of what they were seeing or how they were seeing me, and like they weren't good scenes, right? They're like in my imagination, they were always laughing at me or pointing or judging me.
Yeah, adolescence is the worst, isn't it?
Yeah, totally.
Just teenage years, just rife with anxiety, and yeah, it's rough.
Yeah, that projector with all those scenes, it was just like constant loop all day, every day.
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, I kind of relate to what you're saying because, like school can be Mean Girl City, right? It's like, it's not just like a Tina Fey movie. Like that is very much real life. So it's like, it's kind of cool to like hear men talk about their experience with the same type of anxiety as well, like. Yeah,
like Kyle, was that kind of the experience you were having, or those similar feelings?
Very similar. I do find your story about sitting at the table by yourself kind of interesting. And I'll tell you why. I would share a short story about a time in high school for me. So when I went to that new school, and lunch comes about, everybody goes and sits with their friends, right? But I didn't have any friends. So I was like scrambling to figure out what I was going to do. And me personally, I didn't want to sit by myself at a table because I felt like everybody would be like staring at me and judging me for doing so. So I just like followed this group of boys that were in the same class that I was, that got dismissed for lunch the same time. And I would just sit with them. And I didn't even talk to him. I would just sit there.
Oh, no.
That was my way of blending in. And that was better than going and sitting by myself. So when I heard your story saying you would sit by yourself, I thought, that's interesting because I wouldn't have done that. I would have been too scared to sit by myself. I would have just sat in silence next to other people.
It's cool to hear these like different, like honestly, strategies. We're so young, we don't know what to do. We're just like, how the hell do I survive this?
Yeah.
You don't have that language, but you're trying to figure like ways to survive, right?
Yeah.
And like you share about this in your TEDx talk, Kyle, like, and the kind of the reason it seems like is like you have this really cool goal. You're like working to help 1 million kids deal better with social anxiety. Is that right?
Well, I mean, the reason I want to help teens with social anxiety is because, I went through it, right? So I understand how rough it is to go through it. I don't want anybody to have to go through that. So any way that I can help, teens in middle, high school, I'm willing to do what I can and share the stuff that I've learned and tried and help others, apply it to their own life.
No, that's super helpful. And actually, I think we should go deeper into this, but in like a very, very specific Remoy masculinity way. Like, help us understand what we're going through. Yes, all of us. And, what these kids you're working with may be going through as well.
By Remoy masculinity way, he means let's go down the historical road.
No. That is not correct.
No.
We're going to swap history for science.
Oh, Remoy, the hard-ass science teacher. Okay. Perfect for back to school.
Whoa, look at that callback. Okay.
I mean, yeah, audience, we're talking about our TV and Fresh Prince episode. So that was a few episodes ago, a few chapters back, if you will, with the lovely Soraya Jacardi. And basically, my genius is manifesting again. So just yay for that.
But I think if we do this right, it can be particularly helpful to understand what's happening in our brains during this time.
Remoy, the neurology professor.
Oh, yes. My mother would be mostly proud. Okay.
Isn't that what we all want? Just our moms to be proud of us.
And if we do it right, we can see how this biological progression happens to a lot of us, honestly. And hopefully that'll help us shake off some of the stigma of this experience of anxiety and figure that out. How does that sound?
Yeah, shake it off, Oh my God.
Taylor Swift.
I know, that's it. I know. That was not intentional. I mean, no shade to Taylor Swift, but that is not my brand. Okay?
Well, T Swift is perfect time to go back to adolescence, isn't that right?
Yeah, I mean, do we have to? I don't really want to.
So if we were gonna think, like if you two were gonna think of one seismic thing, like ginormous thing that's happening to like kids at this age, what would it be?
Like high school specifically?
Yeah, or even just slightly before, kind of like Kyle was talking about, maybe even junior high. What would one thing be, you think? Huge in your lives?
Puberty.
Yeah, I was going to say. I'm going to throw it to Kyle, but I feel like that's what it is.
Yeah, you ain't wrong. You nailed it. Ding, 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 ding. Puberty. But yeah, what exactly is puberty?
The transformation of one person's young body into an adult one.
Okay, yeah, sure. That's a creepy answer, but
right? Yeah, right.
Have you ever wondered why are all those transformations maybe happening?
I mean, I don't know. Natural process of life, I guess. Not really into science like that. I don't know, Kyle, do you know? I'm like, I don't know. One day I woke up and I had armpit hair. Like, whatever. I don't know. I mean, like, it just happened.
Okay, so it's when our bodies are changing, but primarily because there's these new stream of hormones, right?
Yeah, sure. I definitely know what a hormone is. Yep.
Okay. Well, luckily we don't need to know exactly what a hormone is, but let's actually look where they start. We got a tiny gland, yes, a gland, science, yes, buried deep at the base of our brain. Any guesses as to what that gland is? I swear you've probably heard of this. Maybe even said it once.
Something with Dala at the end. That's what they talk about when they talk about all the serial killers, or like their amygdala or whatever.
You've watched Grey's Anatomy, I'm sure, or like ER maybe? No?
I'm watching The Resident right now, though. Lit. Great
okay. Anyway. So it's this pea-shaped little knob. You may have heard of it. I swear, the pituitary gland? Anybody? Heard of it at least? No. Okay. Whatever.
Sounds familiar.
Slightly, yes.
It's partly responsible kind of for all sorts of hormones.
Like which kind of hormones?
Yeah, it's the hormones that can actually get you like respond to stress.
Oh, awesome. So the reason why Kyle was walking around for 40 minutes and I have to like think about what I'm going to say is because of this stupid ass pituitary gland. Is that what you're telling us?
Not exactly. The pituitary is in control of helping distribute those hormones that can regulate stress, yes. But it's also involved in key hormones involved, again, going back to puberty, in puberty. You know these hormones. What are they? Come on.
Testosterone, estrogen. Those are the only two hormones I know. To be honest, I did not know there were more hormones than just those two.
Exactly. That's what we're talking about.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, but here's a confusing fact about this biology. This is where it gets interesting. So the pituitary gland is pumping out all these hormones when we're still like young. Bodies are changing, right? But then there's a key part of our brain just a short distance away that's a decade away from being fully developed. Any ideas, Kyle? You actually kind of mentioned this in your TEDx talk.
Part of your brain, I would say the prefrontal cortex, yeah.
Nice.
Exactly.
Kyle with the science answers.
Where's my science head?
Yeah, so it's your prefrontal cortex, and like in your frontal cortex is the region in your noggin that kind of like sits kind of right above your eyebrows.
Okay, so what's this part of our forehead? Like, what does that part of our brain do?
I don't want to put you on the spot, Kyle, but any ideas?
Yeah.
Because it's a lot.
From what I remember, it's basically kind of like the logical part of your brain, right? That's a pretty vague definition of what it does, but
no, let's break it down. I'll break it down for us. So it's like involved in so much, even more so than logic. Yes, we'll get to that. It's involved in like motor tasks, like the frontal cortex can help control skeletal movements, muscular movements.
Okay, so that's like super interesting, but I don't really know how this relates to.
Okay, well, we're gonna get to that part, and it's really interesting. It like helps us with judgment. It can help us discern and differentiate between a variety of conflicting thoughts.
Wow.
Yeah, and it goes actually much deeper than that.
Pun intended?
Yeah, you nailed it. It helps with abstract thinking.
Okay, so yep, definitely intended that pun. Okay, yeah.
The whole thing of like creativity, abstraction, deep ideas, this comes from like the evolving part of your brain.
Oh my gosh, so this is where my genius comes from. Yay. Just kidding, I'm not a genius, but sort of, sometimes. I have genius moments.
Sure, and this is a huge one. The prefrontal cortex is responsible for reasoning.
So it sounds like the prefrontal cortex is responsible for a lot.
One more, basically who we become, okay?
Oh,
like,
boy.
we talk about performance, who we perform in ways like our personality is in part developed and affected in this region.
That's incredible. Kyle, did you know all of this about the prefrontal cortex?
I'm sure I've read about it. I've condensed it down to being it's the logical part of your brain. That's too much to remember.
That's fair. That's fair. But it doesn't actually fully mature until a certain time, right? Like, when does it fully mature?
Yeah, it's reported that this region of the brain doesn't really fully mature until your mid-20s.
Okay, but so if we go back to what you said earlier, the pituitary gland starts sending these hormones into our growing and changing bodies when we're kids, right? Like when we're kids.
Yeah, you got it. You nailed it.
So then if the prefrontal cortex doesn't fully mature until you're in your 20s, that kind of seems really unfair, right? Like you're getting all of these hormones that are like changing your body super drastically, but our brains are like 10 years behind to understand how to manage those changes. Like, doesn't that seem unfair? Like, Kyle.
I'd say the decisions that 18-year-olds and stuff have to make is kind of unfair when they haven't developed that part of the brain.
So why that difference of like 10 years?
Yeah, it's a tough one. You guys have any ideas as to why? Like whether, speaking to the biology of that, why there may be that lag?
I mean, honestly, I feel like this is like a capitalistic ploy to get us to pay our psychologists, because it's just like, why else? Like, why would there be? I mean, no, not really. I mean, I'm not that dumb, but like, come on.
Conspiracy.
It's a conspiracy.
This podcast presented to you by YouTube. And honestly, it's hard to say, but there's this sentiment that seems to make sense. Like, our societies are so complicated, like navigating life in this world with others and our societies is so rich that if our prefrontal cortex matured that early, our minds wouldn't have the time to learn all that complexity and how to navigate it all. There's so much to learn. It takes a long time to develop who we are as we kind of go through that learning process.
Okay, so to be real, that does sound like the pseudoscience that I was spewing just a little bit ago.
Well, we said it earlier, right? Junior high to high school to like first years of college, it's a war zone, right?
I mean, Mean Girls is like a real thing. Like, it's real life. And Mean Boys and Mean non-binary people, probably.
And if like our personality is solidified at 13, there's a good chance we wouldn't be able to handle all that complexity.
I mean, it sounds a little bit like the egg before the chicken, if you will. But I'm like, is that really how that works?
Sure.
I don't know.
Okay, but like, let's just think about it like this. Adolescent kids' brains are these sponges that are like learning, absorbing all the time, right? And you're in all these classes, yes, but maybe the most important thing we're learning at that time is how to like safely navigate these complex social war zones, like the strategies we were coming up with, right?
Okay. So like, what's an example of that?
Yeah, I mean, speaking about those strategies, like, actually, Kyle, you talked about a few of them, or like some of the ideas that were wrestling in your head in that talk. Do you remember? Can you share some of them?
I think you're referring to is like when I was in my desperation period of like how to make a friend. And I was like, kind of like what we were talking about earlier, is like, how do you even make a friend? Like, what do you do? So my idea was to, ask somebody to like borrow a pencil, and that would be my way to like get a conversation going. And then somehow or another, we would just like become friends, all because of me borrowing a pencil from someone, which I never did, and I'm quite certain wouldn't have worked. But it's
I mean, I could actually relate to that, because I feel like the adult version of that is in college, me being like, hey, do you have a cigarette? And then me becoming a smoker because I wanted to make friends. Dude, God, I hope my parents don't listen to this. But yeah,
that one works a lot better, though, I feel. No no emphasis on smoking, don't smoke, but whatever.
Yeah, please don't smoke.
Yeah, but like I don't think my imagination still hasn't stopped about that. Like I still, conjure up these imagined scenarios and like how to like navigate them or get overwhelmed by them,
So is that what like anxiety is? The feeling of it?
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to like be reductive, but it can be one way, definitely. And biologically speaking, like a definition is like anxiety is this protective measure. It's a tool to help us predict and negotiate threats, and it can happen in that prefrontal cortex region.
All right, so Professor Remoy Phillip, the neurology professor, I'm going to need you to break that down.
Proud.
I know. She would. I'm going to need you to break down a little bit more, though.
Sure. Okay. Let's think of the prefrontal cortex like a ginormous toolbox or a trapper keeper, if you will, right? And when we were in school trying to figure out how to fit in, like Kyle, myself, you, Samantha, maybe throughout high school and college, like all those worries, like and those imagined scenarios of like for me sitting, like all these kids are judging me and things of that nature. That's a sign that the toolbox is empty, but knows it needs more tools. Like it's going into the scenario, it doesn't know how to navigate it, but it's trying to protect ourselves. And it's like it's trying to know how to navigate these particular experiences without those tools.
Okay. So it's like a survivor. So basically it's trying to survive that current situation that it's in. Okay. That's better. I mean, I'm starting to follow it. Yeah.
Yeah. And then as we start to experience more and like learn more about our world, like how it all works and how we can fit into it, that's like the toolbox trapper keeper starting to fill up. And like as it fills up and we get more tools and understandings, that's shaping us into who we will be and how we learn to navigate the world.
Okay, so if I'm seeing this correctly, that's a lot of pressure on one person, particularly a young person who is learning, right? At the same time, like learning about life at the same time that they're learning about themselves and trying to figure all these things out. So to try to fill up that toolbox and do all that learning by themselves at such a young age, that's rough. And I feel like that's kind of the pressure and fear that you both have been talking about, but especially you, Kyle, like kind of what I heard, with you speaking in your TED Talk.
Yeah, definitely. Anxiety is a pain. But kind of when you were explaining that, Remoy, it made me think of, and it made me want to mention that anxiety is also a good thing too. Like you do need anxiety. A lot of people think that, anxiety is just this bad thing. I don't ever want anxiety. And kind of, I don't remember which one of you just mentioned it, but it being the survival aspect of it, like that is what anxiety is for, is to keep you alive. If you didn't have anxiety at all throughout your life, you very well may not be here today. Because you wouldn't be able to predict danger, threats. So you might just like run into a quote unquote lion's den because you have no anxiety about it, right?
Yeah, it's definitely one of those tools. But I think like, having this education, especially for kids and young adults, is so like necessary, important, like not just biology and the maths. We did that maths for you, Samantha, European Samantha, we're maths. No. Thank you for that.
Yes,
pity laugh.
We are plural.
But also actually, I think a big thing for education is like how to ask for help. Maybe that could be important for kids.
That's facts. And I feel like also that you're not alone, right? Like, I feel like that's kind of coming really present. That's really present in both of your stories. It's like this feeling of being alone, this feeling of being, just by yourself. And I really see that in your story, specifically with boys. Like,
yeah, Kyle, you're like doing some of this work now, better educating kids, giving them more tools, especially boys, like how to navigate these anxieties before and after it happens. Is that correct?
Absolutely. And a big point for these boys, especially to understand, is that none of their friends or their classmates have it figured out. They're all struggling with their own self-esteem and confidence. All of them are. Nobody has it figured out. So why are we wasting time acting like we have to pretend that we're not feeling some type of way? It's stupid. It's a waste of time. When instead, I like to say, like, you need to start building your tribe, like build your little support group of friends. I'm not saying you have to go to your friend and start crying to them every day or every week about whatever happened, but you're allowed to tell your friends or people in like your tribe, like I said, that this made you feel upset about something that they said, or that you're feeling this type of way because this is going on at home. Just being more open, because we all are going through the same, maybe not the same exact things, but we all go through these struggles. So why are we acting like we aren't? It's so much easier when you just got your boys and you can just talk to each other. I'll talk to him. They'll come talk to me. It feels way better than trying to handle everything on your own, or, getting the courage to like go and sneakily go see your school counselor or whatever. Obviously I promote going and see your counselor too, but I always just try to get them to be more open about it. And that's why I always start with vulnerability, which has been a little bit of a theme of this episode, but because vulnerability is a superpower. So if I can be vulnerable with them and tell them about my experiences in high school, that's super vulnerable for me. It doesn't make me look great by any means, but I know that it's a superpower and it helps other people and they can relate to it, or maybe parts of it. And, so them and their friends start talking, and then it becomes a little bit more open, and they can start, being there for each other instead of, like I said, just acting like nothing's wrong and that to have feelings is weakness, because that is so ironic, because holding in your feelings is a weakness. That does not make you stronger. It makes you weaker. And if you're able to, get that stuff out, you will feel a huge burden released from your back, and it feels great.
Samantha, you want to crack a stoic joke there? You want to talk about me and my lack of access to feelings?
Listen, I normally would. Okay, but we're going to let it slide today because I'm getting a t-shirt, and the t-shirt is going to say vulnerability is a superpower, and it's awesome.
Let's go deeper on this. After this short break, we'll pull out our number 2 pencils and our college rule paper in our 5 questions with Kyle. Stay tuned.
I actually found out later by a friend that Matthew tried to kill himself after that.
What does it look like to go from a perpetrator of violence to an undaunted ally for those who are vulnerable?
So, that made me feel really guilty, and I couldn't eat anything, I couldn't sleep, I couldn't do anything. I thought I deserved what he got. And that's when I started talking to you.
This is the story of Lewis, a 12-year-old who went through a remarkable transformation to become the young man he is today. It's also one of the most powerful things I've ever recorded as part of Breaking the Boy Code, a podcast centered on the inner lives of boys and what it looks like for parents and educators to raise the next generation of men. Created in collaboration with Next Gen Men Podcast Network, listen to Breaking the Boy Code podcast wherever you get podcasts.
Welcome back. So Samantha.
Yes, Remoy?
We haven't done this in a bit. Can you remind me how all this works?
Oh, nice. You want me to be the teacher now? I'm down.
Samantha, we're always learning from you, huh?
Aw, Remoy with an apple in his hand. I'll take it. Okay, so Kyle, in this segment, Remoy will unpack with you over 5 questions. So it's going to be more about all the great work that you've been doing.
Yeah, it's going to be 17 questions that I'll try to make it down into 5. Sure. Okay, whatever.
It's sub questions. So then after he's done with those, the student will become the teacher, if you will. And then that's when you'll get to ask me a question. Me. Yay. But I'll come back in the fray so that we can chop it up.
This is where you get to ask Samantha why she thinks I'm the greatest ever. No?
So actually, Kyle, it's about the podcast. In the past, I've been asked different questions that span the gamut, right? So why did I produce the podcast? How do I engage with media and artists that are problematic when it comes to gender? Even somebody asked me actually what Serena Williams means to me once, which was awesome. So, as you can see, it's really an array of questions. And I'm down to answer anything you have. So how's that sound?
Sounds good.
All right, Remoy, take it away.
Yeah. So, Kyle, question 1. We spent a good chunk of this episode talking about the prefrontal cortex a bit and the brain and me being a genius neurology professor, sure. But you did kind of mention it in your TED Talks a little bit, and it was in a larger conversation about self-love, or a moment you were highlighting about self-love. Can you tell us more about why you responded to that information or why that's important, that self-love aspect?
Yeah, that was really important to me because I spent a lot of my adolescent years not loving myself, especially things that I couldn't really change. And kind of looking back, it was just kind of a waste of time to even, hate on myself for those things. But I digress. But things like I didn't love, how pale my skin was, or that my hair was blonde, or just little things like that, or about how, I wasn't good at talking to people. So I put a lot of pressure on myself and a lot of dislike on myself because of those things. I don't remember exactly when it like clicked for me, but when it did click, it was like, why am I wasting my life hating on myself for the person that I am? Instead, I need to find ways to love who I am so I can live this life loving my life. So I started to really embrace that I have pale skin. And I found that as like a unique point, because I've always been like the palest kid in my class all through school. And it always used to be something I hated. And like, why? Why is that? Why is that a bad thing? Like, no, it's a good thing. I'm a pale person and I like it. Love my blonde hair. So I just started to kind of reframe some negative thoughts in my head about myself, like those things, and started to talk to myself like, yeah, I love my pale skin. I love my blonde hair. It makes me so unique. Like, not a whole lot of people are like this, because I think it's way cooler to be unique than to just follow the trends of everyone else. And it makes me think of my oldest daughter, who's 10 years old. And I don't know how she's this wise, but she loves her uniqueness. She's a weird kid, and she wouldn't be mad if I said that right in front of her. And she says that to herself. She goes, "I know I'm weird, but I like it." And I just love that about her. I'm like, that's awesome. Like, there's nothing wrong with being weird. Like, nothing wrong with it at all. Like, as long as you love it, like, go do your thing. So yeah, I just think it's a much better use of your time to just love the things about yourself.
It's like the self-love part, I believe, is part of like a larger 3-step process for like dealing with like this broader experience of anxiety or social anxiety. Can you like tell our audience more about that 3-step process?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, the first step, like we mentioned, is, practicing self-love, shower yourself with self-love. Step 2 is to find and take on baby step uncomfortable challenges. And then step 3 is to reward your efforts and not your results. And I'll dive a little bit more into those. So for step 2, finding baby step uncomfortable challenges. It's basically the same process as exposure therapy. I didn't know what exposure therapy was at the time when I was doing this, but I kind of linked it back like, oh, that's what I was doing. So if you don't know what exposure therapy, it's basically a widely used practice that psychologists, therapists use for people with social anxiety that has you go into situations that make you feel a little bit anxious so you can kind of warm up and get comfortable to that situation. That was probably that was not a great way to explain it, but so I'll give an example instead. So for example, like my first challenge ever was when I was going to university, and my whole school career, I did not like raising my hand to ask questions. I think that's a common thing among a lot of people, but I felt like people would negatively judge me, or that I'd answer a question wrong and people would think that was stupid, whatever it may be. So I gave myself the challenge of, okay, I'm just going to raise my hand one time in every class. Like, that's all I'm going to do. Not try to get the answer right, or you try to, but it doesn't matter if I get it right or wrong, or if I stumble, if I fall. As long as I raise my hand and say something out of my mouth, I succeeded, I win. So I kept doing that over and over and over again. And what I realized what happened was my brain started to understand that, oh, Kyle is safe in this moment. He's not in any sort of danger. We don't need to bring anxiety out for him every time he raises his hand. So I started to raise my hand multiple times, not because I was trying to, because I actually wanted to.
Hey.
Yeah, exactly. Which was a really cool moment. And that's what got me addicted to, going outside my comfort zone in small ways, though. Because like I said, it's baby step. You don't want to do something like so big and so far outside your comfort zone that, that it throws you through a mental loop and makes you feel even more anxious than you before. So you just want to do things chunk by chunk. So kind of expand that circle, little by little, not over here.
Yeah, no, I just love the way that you painted that picture of like anxiety being like a tool, right? Because it's like a council of people in your head being like, no, Kyle's good. We don't need to bring anxiety out for him right now. He's managed the situation and he's fine. So let's just go back inside and just monitor the situation. I think that is such a helpful way of looking at it. Like, I think that's such a great, it's such a great picture to paint. Like, that's great. Yeah.
You know what that is? That's the toolbox filling up. See that? That's bringing it back.
Step 3, which is the fun one, I think, is you get to reward yourself, which everyone loves to reward themselves, but it's rewarding your efforts and not your results. So, like I said, I didn't reward myself only if I answered a question right. I just rewarded myself every time I put in the effort and I actually raised my hand and said something, because that is all I can control. I can only control my effort, but I can't ever control the result of what I do. Sometimes it'll, the challenge will go exactly like I think it will, or sometimes it'll even go better, or sometimes it'll go way wrong, like I don't think it will. But that's when you just have to remember, like, I put in the effort to go and do this thing. I went outside my comfort zone. Now I'm going to go reward myself. So back when I first started doing this was when I was in college, and I would reward myself, by playing an hour of Xbox before I started on my homework.
Halo, baby.
As I've gotten older and I got 3 kids now, my rewards have kind of evolved. So I don't play much Xbox anymore, but yeah, just finding little ways to reward yourself for putting out that effort. It's kind of a good way to kind of pat your brain on the back, just kind of like signal to yourself that like you did the thing. Like, even though if it didn't feel like you did a very good job, you did it. But yeah, I mean, and it doesn't have to cost money. Like I said, I played Xbox. You go take a 20-minute Netflix break, go have, coffee with a friend, whatever. Just do something to show yourself that you're proud of yourself for going outside your comfort zone, because probably 95% of people just stay in their comfort bubble.
No, I love this because like these are all tools filling up the toolbox. I'm going to end that metaphor now, but but seriously, like the reward system is a key part of like how we function. And like, if we can find the spaces to, break our comfort zones, we can actually learn a lot about ourselves and the world. But, we're middle of my questions here. This is an interesting one. I want to go back to step 1, Kyle. Yeah. Why do you think it could be so challenging for boys, even men, to like prioritize the very first step, like self-love and self-affirmation?
Yeah, it's a very interesting question, because it seems like boys have the most trouble with this, of learning to love themselves, or even just, admit that they have emotions.
Samantha, you want to make another joke there? No? I have emotions. I swear.
I do. I mean, it's touch and go. Let's just put it that way. It's touch and go.
Most of the time, Samantha sees my anger, which, may be a funneled version of all my emotions, but that's fine.
That is false. Most of the time I see your stoicism, my friend. It is a poker face on poker face. But hey, you're an Aquarius. You can't help it. It's cool.
I think if you went up to boys and you say, hey, I want you all to practice self-love, I think they're going to be resistant to that because of the language that you use there. There's something about the word love. There's just something about particular words that you use with boys that turns them off. Love, for whatever reason, sounds kind of feminine. mental health, for whatever reason, doesn't sound very attractive to most men. So when I talk to the boys, I usually don't use words like that. So instead of like mental health, I'll talk to them about how to become mentally strong or mentally resilient. And they seem to be way more apt to listen, even though it's the same thing.
Yeah, I wonder how much of it goes back to like all this education of like maybe girls and other kids are just exposed to the word love more and are given the freedom to like, as like little kids, to like, it's spoken into their lives a lot and given the amount to be curious about it. And while on boys, a lot of that may not happen. I don't know. It's something to be curious about.
That's very true.
Okay, we got 2 more questions left. Was there like a light bulb moment for you, Kyle? Like, especially for this work and the Dude Project? Like, was there one experience or one moment that just said, okay, I'm going to do this work, or I need to do this work, or, oh, there's an opportunity to do this work? What was it?
One light bulb moment was when I had the moment of like, oh, social anxiety is no longer in control of my life anymore. And then I had a separate moment of like, I need to help other people with social anxiety. So the first one was realizing that it wasn't in control of my life anymore, and really hadn't been for a while, but the process is so gradual that you don't really realize it. It's kind of like losing a large amount of weight. You don't realize it day by day, but if you look at a picture, 3 months ago of yourself, it's like, oh, I have made some progress. But it was when I was at this new job, and they had once a month, they did like a office contest is what they called it. And so they would, we'd all compete in something, and whoever wins gets $100. So, I was doing this office contest. We're doing cornhole. I brought my speaker. I think I was playing Taylor Swift and just being goofy as heck and just kind of like, singing, being stupid. Yeah. And I remember on the drive home from work, I remember thinking to myself, I could not have done that a year or 2 ago. Like it made me tear up thinking about it, because I was like, oh man, I've actually reached a point where I'm doing the things that I actually want to do, and I'm not having to like ask permission from my anxiety. Like, is it okay if I do this? Oh no, that's scary. Okay, I'm not going to. Like, I'm just going and doing what I want to do.
Yeah, I mean, I think this may be redundant, but this will be my final question. It's kind of like a softball now, but why is this work important, or why is it so important to you?
It's important to me because and I'll give you a somewhat redundant answer, but I struggle with it myself, and I don't want anybody to struggle with it either. My middle child struggled with it a little bit. She still struggles with anxiety from time to time. She's very much like I was when I was a kid. So it's interesting watched her, but she's way better handling the stuff than I was as a kid. And so it's just like, that's my favorite thing to watch, is for her, or for any of my kids really, to go do something that they are uncomfortable to do, even if it scares them a little bit, but they go and do it because they want to do it. That's my favorite thing to watch. And it's kind of like a culture in our house of like, we do uncomfortable things. Like, even if we're scared to do it, we're going to go do it anyways. And so it's just like a really cool, like culture kind of theme that we have in our family of like, we do uncomfortable things, and it's just really cool to watch my kids do it. And maybe not just as cool, but a very similar coolness to watch other teenagers do the same thing and watch them make progress. It's like, oh, that's really cool. And then I have to sit back and reflect every once in a while, because sometimes it feels like I've been where I am forever. And I have to sit back and kind of reflect of like where I was, 15 years ago, and how hard that was. And now what I'm doing now, like, that still blows my mind when I really think about it. Because I would have never thought I'd be the person helping other people, or that I'd be doing any sort of public speaking to any degree. That still blows my mind that I do that. So I like to, like I said, occasionally reflect on that and just, kind of remember why I'm doing this so other people can thrive and succeed in life. 'Cause I don't want them to have to deal with it and try to do it as adults. It's much easier to do when you're in high school and you have all your priorities taken care of, food, shelter, water. So it's much easier for them to get started on it now than it is, when they're in their 30s and they got everything else going on. So it's just really cool to see. And there's many times where I get teary eyed when I see people do the thing and, they go outside that comfort zone and they're making huge strides and they're able to talk to people now. They were never able to do it before. Oh, I got a girlfriend. I got a boyfriend. And that's just really cool. So I just like seeing it. It's fun.
I can't imagine how rewarding it is. But you know what else is rewarding? We just got to learn all about our brains and we got even deeper into yours, Kyle. So thank you.
Oh my God. All right, Remoy. It's a little cornstarchy, a little...
Wow. Well, Kyle, it's time to face Samantha's sarcasm machine. Get ready for it.
Don't worry, that's only for Remoy.
Mm-hmm.
It's not for you.
No, Kyle, this is your chance. You got to handle my 5 questions, so it's your chance to ask Samantha a question of your choosing. Can be whatever, primarily about the podcast or something related to that. Well, whenever you're ready, go for it.
I'm kind of stealing from another podcast, but I can't remember which one it was. But sorry for the discredit there. But if you could have one message to share with everybody in the world, what would it be?
Wow. Oh my God.
What message?
I know. Just, yeah. See, you have a light touch there, Kyle. Wow, what to say?
Your Venmo account.
Like that. I mean, it may be corny or anything, but I'm a love bug. Loving, I think, is a superpower. And so I think I wish that we found strength in uplifting ourselves and other people more, than finding strength in domination. For me, finding strength in love, vulnerability, and community is really the answer to a lot of different things. And I think really moving away from domination of the self and of other people will really get us a lot further, a lot further,
No pun intended, but I love it.
Hey,
thanks. Love it. Thanks. Thanks.
Kyle, tell the audience what's coming up for the Dude Project, or my anything the audience can be aware of, or see you next, or hear you next, or anywhere online where they can engage with your work.
Yeah. All my social media is just at Social Anxiety Kyle. My website is, you guessed it, socialanxietykyle.com. Dude Project is a new one that I've just launched this year, which I'm getting to do starting in very beginning of October. I'm hitting up a bunch of schools, Oklahoma and Nebraska. So that'd be cool. If you're listening in one of those states, reach out to me. But, I hope to have some really cool footage from how that turns out. I'm really excited about it. Also very nervous about it, but also very excited.
Yeah. That's really awesome. I just want to say, please let us know when that happens, because we'll definitely boost that in our socials, because we definitely want those kids, you want those boys attending, your presentations. That is of the essence, because especially kids in those states right now are losing a lot of access to really important education. Oh my God, I'm so it's really important work. So please let us know when you do that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, Remoy?
Yeah, Samantha?
After this talk with Kyle, even though you went science teacher.
Yeah, sure. FX. Give me that TV show. Come on.
Actually, I've acted in one of Remoy's shows.
Oh, yes, you have.
And he is that genius.
Everybody, Other Colors. That's the show. Go watch it wherever you can find it, which is nowhere, but just pretend you can.
Shout out to John Butts, wherever you are, living that dad life. Anyway, so I'm super excited to get back into these conversations. And what else are we actually exploring through the rest of 2024, which is almost over? Hard to believe.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost over, but we have so many more exciting stories.
Like what?
Like some questions. Okay, have you ever considered why boys wear blue and girls wear pink and how it actually wasn't always like that?
Well, I have, and I'm interested to hear more because I don't like pink at all.
And maybe like why the whole American cowboy myth came to be and maybe how it's connected to our presidential politics?
Alex Trebek, what is capitalism? And also RIP.
Ding, 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 ding.
Love you.
We'll be touching back in this informal series we got going called Women Warriors. Specifically, next episode, we'll be looking at some badass Black abolitionists and how these women fought for freedom, emphasis on fought, and it may thrill you.
Damn, I'm ready. I'm definitely going to listen. I mean, yeah.
I mean, naturally, yes.
Right. Yeah, but seriously, this is going to be some exciting, wildly curious things that we're going to be searching through about gender and especially masculinity. And it's just like, don't we want more folks to engage with us with this conversation?
Yeah. This is where we say it naturally, yes.
Maybe you can tell my husband that.
Ooh, yes. She's always right. Adam, Samantha's always right.
Thanks. So listeners, and husband included, help us get these stories and discoveries into more people's ears. Time is of the essence. This is really the time to do that. Tell others to subscribe, to follow, or whatever button they need to push in order to get this podcast into their ears in whatever app of their choosing.
Yeah, and actually, if that app is Apple Podcasts, remind folks to check their feeds. They may have to hit the download button in lieu of the hiatus we're just back from.
That's right. And I'm excited for what we're going to uncover next. Science/English/literarticle/neurology, the best teacher.
Me too, Samantha.
Yes.
But until then, I'm not all those slashes. I'm your boy, Remoy George Phillip, the first.
And it's Samantha Nzesi Kifle. Thank you so much for listening.
Peace.
Ciao. It's still, it's so long. It's so long.
That's what she said.